Hello, welcome to your Online Strength Coach podcast, episode 46, Daily Undulating Periodization.
Hey little girl, is your daddy home? Did he go and leave you all alone? I got a bad desire. I'm on fire.
Hello and welcome to episode 46. Today is Friday the 25th of September 2015. Thank fuck it's Friday, as they say. Yeah, pretty hectic week at work for all 2 days of it. Sure know how to cram a lot of things into one day, I'll tell you that much. One podcast I was actually thinking about doing, and maybe you can get on the comment section and think if it's a good idea or not. Was going to do a podcast on what's actually like to work in professional sport. Not going to name names and stuff. I'm just going to like a day in the life of a professional strength and conditioning coach with a pro team. 'Cause I know it's a fairly oversubscribed profession. A lot of people looking to get into it. So I think it'd be good to maybe give people a bit of a reality check that it's not all fun and games. It's not even close. So that's something you're interested in listening to. Please shoot us a comment or like it, or whatever. Email me, speedpowerperformance@gmail.com. You know that by now. If you're a new listener, that's my email. Today is going to be a bit more of an involved episode. Normally I go off the dome, don't really do much prep work. I've not done any prep work for this, but I've got a few studies just to kind of hammer home a point. We've got 3 studies, 2 meta-analyses, one from 2009, one from 2015, and I have an equated volume study, just to kind of chat around the area. So, as per usual, although we did read the question out on episode 44, this is episode 45, sorry, which was yesterday. Question comes from Adam Pabani. Hope that's the correct pronunciation. Second time of asking. Hey Mark, could you talk about daily undulating periodization in your next podcast, if you're familiar with it? Well, yes. Being both a strength coach and a strength and conditioning coach, I am reasonably familiar with the topic. We'll just do a little primer before we get into the nitty gritty and the ins and outs of actually what it is, and what actually is out there and what's reality on the topic. So daily undulating periodization, basically you compartmentalize your sessions. So let's say, for instance, your powerlifting. So your workout is bench, squat, and deadlift, and you have a 3-day program. Day 1. Let's say day 1 is a strength program. So that is, say, 5 sets of 3. So you're looking for intensity and load. Now let's say day 3 or day 2, which is Wednesday, day 3 in the week, but day 2 of your program, let's call that speed. So we're doing 5 sets of 3, but we're looking more at a strength speed sort of volume. You won't do strength speed with these exercises, but just for the sake of argument, let's call it strength speed. So you're working at, let's say on the first day you do 5 sets of 3. So day 1, 5 sets of 3 at 85% of strength loading, intensity, and volume. Day 2 is your speed strength, or your strength speed, sorry, not speed strength. 5 sets of 3 at 60%, with the intention being speed, velocity. Velocity of movement is your intention. Maybe you chuck bands and chains in to help with the velocity or the intention, however you want to work it, it's fine. But it's your speed day. And day 3, or Friday, is your hypertrophy day. So we'll just keep the exercises the same, and it's 3 sets of 10 at those same exercises at, say, 60%, or 60 to 70%. So a volume load, a reasonably non-fatiguing volume load that's designed to hypertrophy the muscles involved in the lift. So within the same week, you're training 3 qualities: strength, speed, and your hypertrophy. or you're training mechanical. So you're training neural factors purely on day 2, although some research would suggest that kind of work induces hypertrophy. Day 1, you're working on neuromechanical factors, so basically just maximum strength. And day 3, you're working purely on mechanical factors. There's no rate coding, there's no kind of intermuscular coordination happening. There's no neurological stimulus for strength gain. It's basically all mechanical. It's volume load on the muscle fibers causing damage to produce a growth stimulus. So that, in a nutshell, is daily undulating periodization. Now, what I'll do is we're going to talk around this subject a little bit. This might be a bit of a longer podcast, which is fine, hopefully, for you. We're going to talk around the subject, and basically we're going to show why daily undulating periodization is a crock of shit. It's not really a thing. It's a gimmick within programming. It's a programming gimmick, basically. So first of all, before I start giving my opinion, let's actually look at some studies. So first study, May 2002, a comparison of linear and daily undulating periodization programming with equated volume and intensity for strength. This was carried out by Matthew Ray et al. In the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, May 2002 edition. Their study had 20 men. They were randomly assigned to linear periodization or daily undulating periodization. They worked on off bench press and leg press. Training involved 3 sets of bench and leg press, 3 days per week. The linear periodization group performed 8 sets or 8 RM during weeks 1 to 6, 6 RM during weeks 4 to 8, and 4 RM during weeks 9 to 12. Daily undulating periodization altered training on a daily basis: Monday 8 RM, Wednesday 6 RM, Friday 4 RM. Analysis of variance with repeated measures revealed statistically significant differences favoring the daily undulating periodization group between T1 to T2 to T1 to T3. Making program alterations on a daily basis was more effective in eliciting strength gains than doing so every 4 weeks. So there you have a 20-person study with a reasonably solid design for reading the abstract. Haven't actually delved into it, which I probably should to look at the methodology. But however, it looks fairly kosher. Well, that's one study. And now what we're going to do, and I will discuss after we look at the systematic reviews, why I'm doing this, and then I'm reading systematic review, and why that needs to be done with sports science particularly, but also with science in general, but definitely with sports science. So, let's just get my bearings here first. Yeah. So this is pretty much the first systematic review I've seen on this topic. I don't know, this is a systematic review. No, it's not even. Sorry, we'll negate the study. So the 2015, sorry, apologies on that. 2015 study, systematic review and meta-analysis of linear and undulating periodization resistance training programs on muscular strength. This was published in the April 2015 Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, carried out by Simon Harris et al. So periodization is known to improve training adaptations, but the most effective periodization approach for muscular strength development for a wide variety of populations is yet to be determined. This systematic review and meta-analysis examined all studies directly comparing linear and undulating periodized resistance training programs to determine and compare their effects on muscular strength. A systematic search of Medline, Scopus, and Sport Discus databases revealed 17 studies satisfying the inclusion criteria. There were a total of 510 participants in the included studies. 16 studies reported significant increases in strength for both periodization approaches. 5 studies reported significant differences in improvements between groups. The meta-analysis determined that there was no differences in the effectiveness of linear versus undulating periodization on upper body or lower body strength. The short-term nature of the studies and the previous training history of participants were identified as potential confounding factors in the interpretation of the findings. The results suggest that novelty or training variety are important for stimulating further strength development. Few studies have examined the effect of periodization approaches in adolescent or athletic populations. Okay, so well, maybe I'll just look at the second study, but it's kind of like irrelevant to my point, but I feel like I should read it out because I've got it there. This was comparison between linear and daily undulating periodization and resistance training and increase in strength. Again, JSAR, or Journal Strength Edition, December 2009, by Janto Prestes et al. Butchered that pronunciation, no doubt. To determine the most effective periodization model for strength and hypertrophy is an important step for strength conditioning professionals. No shit. The aim of this study was to compare the effects of linear and daily undulating periodization and resistance training on body composition and maximum strength levels. So this had 40 men, so twice the size of the last study, with a minimum of 1 year strength training experience. So already a higher quality study because there's an exclusion criteria to kind of get rid of any novices. So they had 20 people in the linear periodization group and 20 people in the daily undulating group. Subjects were tested for maximum strength in bench press, leg press, and arm curl. So one more exercise, but the same exercises. And they were tested after 8 weeks, after 12 weeks, and baseline. So T1 was baseline, testing 2 was 8 weeks, testing 3 was 12 weeks. And what they looked at was, in conclusion, undulating periodization strength induced higher increases in maximal strength than linear model in strength trained men. For maximizing strength increases, daily intensity and volume variations were more effective than weekly variations. Okay, so on the face of it, what we have here, we have a study from 2002 with an extremely low population showing a positive outcome. We have a study from 2009 with still a very low population, but double the population, but still a very low population in the realms of research, showing again a positive outcome. And then when we increase the pool and the amount of studies, we have a pool of 510 participants, we come out with a no difference. So between linear and daily undulating periodization, through the whole research, there's no significant findings. There is no consensus which is better and which is worse. What we're in agreement here is training of your training, or changing your training periodically. Periodization is better than not changing your training at all, which I think we can all agree with. Now, this is why I always push meta-analysis or systematic review within sports science. When you have 20 participants, 40 participants in a study, and you don't control everything. So if we put this in the context of a medical study, so if we're testing a drug, say, so let's say we had 20 people for this drug test, or this drug test, this drug trial. For 10 people, I would need extremely population-specific data. So if it was cancer patient, so it would need to be patients with a certain disease of a certain age group that they need to have very specific inclusion criteria. We have a list of 20 different inclusion criteria that you need to meet. If you meet all 20, I can include you in a group. That's already hugely more control than we have for sports science. Then, when it comes to study, you come and live in my lab, or you come and live in my complex. If it's a 2-week study, you live there for 2 weeks. I control your diet, I control your entertainment, I control your sleep patterns. I basically control everything. I control your life for like 2 weeks. And you get paid for it, of course. But I control every single confounding variable possible. Because with such a small sample size, the amount of ambient noise within that data, you can't determine any form of effect size, really, or any form of statistical significance, because the sample size is too small, the data set is too small, and the confounding factors, or the noise on the data is far too great. So if we look at two different studies, one with 20 and one with 40, that aren't, let's be honest, they aren't population specific and they are poorly controlled, we have positive effect. As soon as we enter into the realms of a larger study, 500, which is still not a big study, but it's getting towards acceptable for epidemiology, but we'd probably need more in there, like 5,000, 50,000, to actually have some form of... If this was, for instance, if it was 510 rugby players, and we were looking at this strategy for rugby players of a certain standard, that would be a good study. As 510 just randomly attributed people, so college students, people with 1 year, 2 years experience, or whatever, like the populations are variant. So it's probably still not a large population, but it's much larger. It's another order of magnitude larger than the second study. We have no statistical significance. So research says there's no difference between linear periodization, which gets a bad rap, and daily undulating periodization, which is the end thing apparently. Although I'm not aware of that. I'm probably rambling a little bit here. So that's kind of looking at the science of it. Actually, just what the research says. That's a systematic review of all data published this year. So that's state of play basically as far as research goes on this. What I would say to that is 17 studies on a topic of this size doesn't really bode well. Periodization is a huge topic. Now, I've already spoke to this, but I'll speak to it again beforehand when someone asked this topic. I can't remember the episode. It was like 30 odd. Well, when you look at any kind of program that's put together by a reasonably competent strength coach or a reasonably competent strength conditioning coach, let's take another powerlifting program because it's easy. So within that program, my sport-specific practice, bench press, squat, deadlift, I will program for these exercises depending on where I am within my season. So within a general preparation phase, I will very much look to be in more of a mechanical kind of setting. I'll be looking to affect things like strength endurance, hypertrophy, the general qualities. They're going to make my future training cycles better. The next phase will be bridging between a strength endurance mechanical focus block into kind of a midline strength or a volume load designed to elicit strength. But let's say it's not a maximum strength block, it's just a strength training block per se, let's say. Working between 70 to 80%, trying to look at skill acquisition, working with loads, looking at accelerating those loads in a cyclical manner. And then let's say we come into competition time and we're 10 weeks out and we do a 10-week peaking phase. Now within that peaking phase, we're going to come into a purely maximum strength block. But what we do is we realize the volume work we've done within that midline block, within that strength block, that strength training block. The maximal strength block is basically just a ramp up to prepare yourself neurologically to be able to exhibit the strength that you've built up during the strength building or the midline strength block. So that's for the competition lift. So you will flip-flop between that. You will go between general prep within the specific prep. So these three exercises are specific prep. But the general prep area is the strength endurance, so 5 sets of 5, 3 sets of 10, whatever, just like large volume loads designed to induce hypertrophy and not necessarily designed to push strength per se, although there has been an element of that to induce a response. Then we go into a more volume-based approach where we look at the quality of lifting, we accrue volume over the week, we don't train the fatigue, we just build up more volume with the same weights. Or we go up a weight, drop the volume, and then accrue more volume with that weight. And then we go into a peaking phase for a meet. So that's your competition specific prep or your sport specific prep within powerlifting. That's a good way of handling it. It's not the only way of handling it, but it's a good way of handling that side of the program. Now let's look at other aspects of the program. Let's look at assistance work. So assistance work for the upper body. Let's look at the upper back. Do we enter into a specific strength phase for the upper back? A relevant question. Probably not. Why do we not need to enter a specific strength phase for the upper back? Because all we do there, let's say look at one of our lifts. One of our lifts is bench row, or what's been called seal. I don't know who the fuck called bench row seal row, but I've seen it called seal row on Propane Fitness, and pretty stupid name. Anyway, they call it chest supported dumbbell row or bench row, but whatever you want to call it. Let's say it's your major assistance exercise. Okay. On this exercise, well, let's say we typically train with 3 sets of 10. We work cyclically between 70 to 80% of RM, or maybe it's probably a little bit high, maybe 65 to 75% of RM. And we work cyclically within that range, and we just, as we get stronger, the weights within that range just change. So, for example, if you start off with a 1 RM of 100 kilos, you work between 65 to 75 kilos, working with 3 sets of 10, and over the period of 4 blocks, maybe those weights move up like 5 kilos. So you're working with 70 to 80 kilos, but that's still 65 to 75% of your 1 RM, because your 1 RM obviously increases as you get stronger within those rep ranges. Now, do we need to come out of that 3 sets of 10 block into 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 8, 3 sets or 4 sets of 6, 4 sets of 4, 3 sets of 3, 2 sets of 2, 1 set of 1 to set a personal best within that lift? I would venture not within the sport of powerlifting. It's not really much point. All we're doing is we're trying to balance strength from bench press. So the muscles such as serratus anterior, lower traps, rear delts, lats to a lesser extent that don't actually get actively used within your sport specific prep within the bench press itself. We're trying to build up strength within that to maintain balance within the shoulder girdle. We're trying to build up strength as well within the antagonist muscles to help with them switching off when we try to exert maximum force. So an example can be within sprint training or within running. Some of the activation or some of the neurological adaptation that you can get from lifting weights within a sprinting scenario can be they improves the co-contraction ability of the hamstring. So when the quadriceps acting maximally, the hamstring's silent or more silent or less active, which allows the quadricep to operate at a higher output without the risk of injury. And this works as well within general strength training. That's why doing something like getting stronger at a bench row or getting stronger at a dumbbell row can have the effect of actually making you stronger at bench press indirectly, because it can increase the ability of the prime movers to act without the antagonist stuffing up their action. Or if that makes sense. So that's part of like rate coding, and that's more intermuscular coordination. So between muscles, the coordination aspect. That's one of the neurological adaptations of that process. But that's within that's getting away from the topic. Within this program, we have a purely mechanical aspect. We have a purely hypertrophy aspect for the upper back. Okay? So let's say, within that same training week, we have hypertrophy with our assistants, and we have strength loading for our sport-specific practice. Now, let's look at our sport-specific practice. Maybe we're on a program where there's speed work, or maybe there's skill work in another kind of way of talking about it, where, let's say we have 2 days. Let's look at the Brad Gillingham bench program, which is on Cast Iron Strength, if you want to look at the calculator. Brad Gillingham, a crazily strong lifter for the United States, competed in the IPF. On his bench program, there's a heavy day and there's a light day. So we look at the heavy day, where we're doing maximal recruitment. We're working neurological factors there. We're just getting better. We're getting better at handling heavy loads in that day. Now there's a light day. What do we do in the light day? Well, maybe we do sets of 5, sets of 8, sets of 10, at sub-maximal percentages, or we do 3s, or we do 4s, but it's sub-maximal, or maybe we do close grip. What we do here, we do a bit of strength speed, and we do a bit of mechanical factors. So within that same week, there are different aspects within the program. If you look at pretty much any program that's been designed by someone who has an inkling of what they're doing, you don't see the same sets and reps for every exercise. It doesn't exist. This is what we're speaking in here. We're speaking within the dichotomy. No one really sets out a program where we do the same thing, we do the same reps, we do the same sets and reps. It does not exist. So what we have here, we have linear periodization versus daily undulating periodization. We have researchers or people setting up scenarios that don't actually exist in real world strength programming. When someone sets up a strength program who is of a good ability within the programming, whether programming knowledge is sufficient, or they are practically experienced enough to have got the high level development or got other people to a high level of development through coaching, they will understand that there are different factors within your program. So you need to address hypertrophy, you need to address skill acquisition, submaximal loads, and you need to address actual just neurological adaptation of lifting heavy loads. All of these 3 things need to be trained within the program, and they should never leave the program at any stage. Only within maximum towards the last week of a competition build-up, or in a tapering phase, the mechanical factors, the skill factors should diminish. The amount of maximal loading, the neurological adaptation should diminish. Not the intensity of loading, but the volume of loading should all diminish in a taper. All periodization, all programming follows these principles. There aren't different schools of thought or different schools of periodization. I think only people who don't really understand training think that these schools exist. They don't. It's all within the same thing. It's all programming. It's all training. But yeah, that concludes this episode. Hope you've enjoyed it. Again, questions, comments, please leave them below. If you like it, hit it with a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, hit it with a thumbs down. Subscribe in both cases. Some will be good, some will be bad. I've been Mark. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for your time. Questions, comments, please leave them below. Any queries, send them to speedpowerperformance@gmail.com. And I will see you sometime during the weekend for episode 47. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Tell me now, baby, is it good to you? Can I do to you the things that I do? Well, I can take you high.